Yeah,
Roger, are you there?
yeah, I'm here.
You're still there. You're still there.
Wonders never cease, eh?
Yeah. Hey, Roger, where are you physically located in the world right now, mate?
I'm in the office, Extinction Rebellion. Yeah,
In London.
11 o'clock,
Okay.
London.
Okay. So I'm in Brisbane, Australia, as it's been established.
Yeah.
Can you give us like just a 2 minute overview of who Roger is and tell us about this mission that you're working on now, the Extinction Rebellion, and where that came from?
Yeah. Well, my background is I've been working in social movements off and on since I was 15. But to cut a long story short, I've been an organic farmer for 20 years, growing vegetables in Wales, in the UK. And then I've done about 5 or 6 years of research really on radical political change, and more specifically at King's College on the practicalities of bringing about rapid political change through mass civil disobedience and similar mechanisms. And about 2 or 3 years ago, myself and a bunch of slightly heretical sort of researchers and activists set up an organisation called Rising Up, which wanted to study how to bring about system change for various and obvious reasons. And last January, I wrote a paper called Pivoting to the Real Issue for that network, which argued that the time is right for rebellion against governments for their criminal inactivity on the climate crisis. And that led to the formation of Extinction Rebellion, which went sort of global last October. And we've just had a fortnight of interesting activity in London, as you know.
Yeah, I saw you in an interview with Chris Hedges. You mentioned your work permaculture of growing vegetables. Is it true to say that you're unable to continue that because the climate shifted around you? Is that a fair statement? Is that what drove you into this?
Well, like this is a global phenomenon, right? There's no place in the world now where farmers aren't like stressed out by, the extreme variability of the weather. I mean, it just hasn't really hit the headlines because it's not got to a sort of critical point for rich people in the Western world, as you might say. But the fact of the matter is, like, the weather's all over the place and has been for a good 10, 15 years. And that makes it enormously difficult, particularly for small farmers that don't have, a big cash flow. You only need one bad year and basically you're out of business.
Yeah.
So this is a big phenomenon, in the global south, poorer countries, but it's also a big issue for smaller farmers on the periphery of Western countries as well. So yeah, about 12 years ago, whatever, it rained every day for 7 weeks. I lost all my crops. Everyone lost their jobs. And so for me, it's a visceral reality, as it is for an increasing number of people, right? It's like every month and year that this thing carries on, more and more people realize it's not some theoretical proposition. It's, an in your face sort of disastrous situation.
Yeah. Okay. And so then the Extinction Rebellion. So you've had 2 weeks of activities or 11 days of activities in London. Can you tell me how? My understanding is that you sort of initially said a 2-week program, but you pulled back a few days early, and then have basically been assessing what has come out of that and reframing the strategy. Is that where you're up to now?
Well, that sounds very grand and organised, doesn't it? Makes it sound like we're all in control and everything just smoothly glides along
as planned.
Yeah. Like, if I was a PR company, that's what I'd say. But the reality is a little bit messier than that.
Democracy is messy. Freedom is messy.
Being humans that we are. But yes, the general gist is that, we've had another 100,000 people join us on Facebook, and umpteen 100,000 on various other social media, and it's going around the world. And we've got 50,000 new people in the UK to integrate into groups, and
right.
It's quite an undertaking, as you can imagine. But I think after the thing in November, we did change our structures so that in theory we could accommodate like 2 million people or something.
Right.
I'm not saying that that's quite the case, but certainly we're in a position now where we've got a big infrastructure to have a few hundred sort of different groups. There's 32 different groups here in London,
Right.
And we've got, you know, integration processes and what have you. And yes, obviously we're trying to work towards the next rebellion event, as it were, probably in October.
Right.
But there's a whole host of things that are going to be happening between now and then,
Yeah.
including probably some significant things. But yeah, I mean, that, you know, there's no big surprises. We've got a big job to do, and that's going to be achieved through mass participation in civil disobedience by, you know, hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah. Okay. And so something later on in the year in October, which is basically the grander version of what you sort of already laid out in London. Is that right? Without
Yeah. Hopefully we can finish the job and I can go back and weed carrots. You know what I mean?
Well, I saw somebody actually planting carrots on Waterloo Bridge, and so you can combine the two.
Yeah.
All right, and so actually, there's some interesting discussions in this household last night about using some of your XR tactics and applying some gentle pressure on the Brisbane City Council over here in Australia, which is one of the local governments in the world. It's got 900,000 people and huge amounts of infrastructure and almost no conversations at all about climate change. And because I've read a lot of your stuff and watched a lot of your videos, I was just trying to get down to this point, is that we don't need to blockade the entire city or even all of the councillors. We actually only need to blockade really the councillors that are holding out on the political demand. And so you can sort of see, and that's part of it as well, is the resourcing. Like you're saying, if you've got potentially 2 million people, but you've got to have all that administrative infrastructure to be able to ensure that they're all, you know, marching in step, right? And that's what you've been building up over the years. Can you tell me politically? So the discussions you had with Gove and with Sadiq Khan and the others, is that sort of gone broadly as you'd expected, which is that, you know, they found you annoying but not particularly compelling at this point?
Yeah, I guess so. You know, I don't put much store by people, you know, people speaking.
Yeah.
The name of the game is action. So, but you know, you can deduce by that we're at the foothills of actually getting the job done in terms of the enaction of a climate emergency by Western governments. But you know, it's going to come. It's more a question of when, really.
Yeah.
I mean, as I like to say, if a government wants to propose the mass destruction of the younger generation, then it isn't impossible to conceive there's going to be a rebellion against that. So that's what governments are now presented with. And obviously, to a certain extent, they're still in the sort of laughing phase, as Gandhi put it, you know, like they ignore you, they laugh at you, then they fight you, then they win. So, you know, the fight phase is yet has yet to be gone through, but there is another side to that. And obviously, there's plenty of historical examples where mass civil disobedience has brought about structural change. So, you know, it's important to be realistic. You know, it is possible, but obviously it's difficult, you know, and the name of the game is to get as many people to break the law, you know, in a concentrated time and place, preferably in big cities or the capital city. And as you saw, what happened in London is, you know, he gave it quite a good shot. It's the biggest civil disobedience event in British history. There was 1,000 arrests in 10 days. And it shook, you know, it shook the media and the government out of their complacency. And that's exactly what needs to happen. Obviously, ideally, we want 20,000 people do it, and then, you know, the government will cancel, you know, new airports and stop fracking, and actually, you know, you start to get concrete change. So the idea that we can't create concrete change is, you know, it's ridiculous. It's not, you know, it's just a matter of the numbers at the end of the day, and that's a matter of mobilising effectively, and you know, some people just going for it, really. Because once some people go for it, then other people will follow. So it's not right. You know, the big mistake people make is thinking, you know, there's not enough of us, so we can't do it. Well, as soon as you've got a few hundred people, you need to go for it. You know, it's an emergency, and we just need to get on with it.
Okay, I saw a photograph which I had to like do a double take on, but it was a picture of you in a suit a while ago, glued to the City Hall building in London. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, technically, I'm standing in the EU elections.
Okay. Oh,
But I think our new slogan is "Don't vote for me." We're basically, as a 19-year-old teenager that we're trying to get into the EU,
right,
so we're asking everyone to vote for her.
right.
But yeah, I mean, we're using the political process as another platform, really, to highlight the corruption of the political elite,
Yeah,
and doing that through civil disobedience or direct actions. So it's a continuation. This isn't technically part of Extinction Rebellion, I should make clear. It's a separate
yeah,
thing
yeah.
altogether. But yeah, I haven't worn a suit for 30 years. So that's a sort of that was a little bit of a new
That was,
departure.
that was a political statement in itself.
Yeah, I
this,
quite like
this
to
is
actually, in
the
a funny
rebellion
sort of
has
way.
really begun. So I saw in one
Yeah.
of the XR newsletters that made reference to some of the XR leaders were standing as MEPs, but that they would disconnect from their roles in Extinction Rebellion. Is that what's planned? Is that what you have planned?
Yeah. We've stood back for that. I mean, Extinction Rebellion, as everyone should know, is not a party political organisation,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
obviously individuals within it do have party allegiances, and that's fine and obvious, really. So, there's people in XR who are, associated with the Labour Party, the Green Party, and there's some people that want to stand as independents, and that's all fine as long as there is clear that that's not XR. So yeah, there's been a bit of confusion about that, but I think there's strong arguments for, personally speaking, I think there's strong arguments for standing in elections. I
yeah,
think you've got quite a lot of independents, haven't you, standing in Australia,
absolutely.
and I think the more that you can give the main parties a little bit of a kick, as you might say, to actually stand up for some common decency, then the better, really. And that's what the democratic process is all about, isn't it?
Yeah,
As
yeah,
citizens, we're free to stand in elections and criticise those that have become corrupt. And certainly that's the case in the UK and Australia.
mm.
And, the people's will win in the end, I
Yeah.
expect.
We've got an election in Australia in a week's time on Saturday. It's when the
Yeah.
elections are closed, and there's a good chance that the Labor Party will get in. And we had a climate change meeting here the other day, and there's some data that came out that showed that the Labor Party's climate policies are about 56% of what we need, compared to the
Yeah.
Greens, who's 99. So even if we get the Labor Party coming in, who's got this strong climate change platform, they're still going to need a bit of a tickle from the Extinction Rebellion. So how is
Oh,
XR spread around the world? Can you talk about that?
well, just on your last point, I mean, and in more than a tickle, right?
Mm.
We're talking about the destruction of the next
Yeah,
generation, and we can't
yeah,
be affording to be pissing around here.
yeah,
And as soon as the Labour Party wins, assuming they are, the next day you want to be in the centre of Australian cities closing them down. There's absolutely no point in pretending that these elite politicians are going to do anything unless basically, they're forced through street movements. I mean, that's the oldest
yeah,
story in the book in terms of radical political change.
yeah,
Just because people come out with nice words, and the Labour Party, both in the UK and Australia, has been coming out with nice words for 30 years.
yeah,
But that doesn't mean they're going to do anything.
yeah,
And it's absolutely essential. People don't think you vote in these politicians and they'll do anything. There's massive structural pressures, as we're all aware, on nothing happening. Not least the whole capitalist class, which is dedicated to the fossil fuel sort of suicidal path. So we've got a big problem, and it's not. We shouldn't be looking at it in a sort of NGO sort of campaigning frame. We should be looking at it in a revolutionary change frame.
yeah,
And nothing could be more serious, could it? Particularly in Australia, where no disrespect, but you must just about buggered in terms of what's going to happen to your country in the next 30 years. So it's all systems go.
yeah. No,
So that brings.
fair.
Yeah, it just brings us on to the second question, which is, obviously XR's in lots of countries in varying degrees. And, we're part of an ecology of different social movements. So I want to emphasize that, it's not like XR is going to necessarily lead a charge here. You've got the children's strikes and all that business. And no doubt you'll have new movements coming along. And I think the idea is these movements work in some creative tension with each other, to move the whole system along. And that's the model we're sort of looking at, really.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's great. All right, Roger, thank you. That's I'll let you get back to plotting the overthrow of the British government.
Yeah. That's the plan.
Yeah. Okay. So keep it short and sharp, and maybe I can touch base with you further down the track and learn more about your plans.
Yeah, no problem at all. And thanks very much, and good luck to everyone. And hopefully the election produces something a little bit more sane than what you've got at the moment, eh?
Not insane, let's put it that way. Born again Christian running the country.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that.
All right.
All right then.
All right, and I'll
Yeah.
send you the link to this when I've zipped it up and put the.
Yeah. Great stuff. All right. Thanks so much.
Talk soon,
Yeah,
mate.
bye.